segment here on Speak called Fair Play, where we turn about the tables and my guests get to ask me a question about my almost 40 years in the creative industry. As a filmmaker, a novelist, a playwright, a poet, the core mechanic designer for games, and a musician, I can talk about the creative industry for hours, but especially as the CFO of the nonprofit Blue Legacy that's been dedicated since 1989 to empower, educate, and elevate artisans from all walks of life. And today on Fair Play, we are talking to Jim and Janice, who are the authors of the Deerware Codex. Now, Janice wrote the first two books and she created this world, but Jim was her incredible research companion and also her fantastic husband and soulmate. And Jim joined her to write the collection of tales set in the Deerware Codex universe for the third book in the series. Now, Janice asked me a question during our fantastic interview on Speak, and I think we answered it as much as we could there. I think my answer was basically, how do I select a book as a publisher? How do I know that it's truly inclusive and meets what we're looking for? And my answer was, it's really hard. And that also I find myself often having to separate the artist from the art, because often the art is elevated to a point that maybe the individual may not be. And I think that sometimes the art strives to be more inclusive than the artisan themselves. Maybe they don't know how to break past those barriers or whatever it is. But I try really, really hard. I didn't know that question was coming. And Jim, you have a question for me for here at Fair Play. And I don't know what this one is, but I will answer to the best of my ability.
Okay. When you read something that you wrote in the past, do you instantly think of a better way to phrase it?
I do.
I don't mean that.
I like that. No, I like that question. I think one of the things this is just, we had such a great time. I had such a great time. Actually, I should say we use I statements, Jennifer. I had such a great time with you guys doing the Speak interview, and one of the little jewels in that I didn't know was coming was that we both really like to embarrass your grown son, who I also published, David Mecklenburg. David also asked me about my past and my writing in the past. And I don't think he expected what my answer was, which was basically that there's a particular work from my past that I wish would just die. I believe I called it my albatross around my neck, but let me say, there are two Jennifers. Well, no, there's many Jennifers. Just like we all have many facets of ourselves.
We've seen more than two.
Yes, there we go. But in terms of my writing career, let me put it that way. Jennifer has been very blessed to have two writing careers. Boy, now we have to back that up. So there's Jennifer the filmmaker, that's a kind of writing, and there's Jennifer the playwright, that's a kind of writing. But I'm not actually talking, there's two Jennifers that have had science fiction writing careers. One of them is 19, and one of them is in her 40s. The Jennifer in her 40s who is enjoying a writing career as a hard science fiction writer is very happy and very pleased to have a career again after taking almost a 2-decade hiatus from writing what I love, the only genre I truly love, the only genre, if I could only write in one genre for the rest of my life, it would be hard science fiction. I love that. But there's another Jennifer who fans supported and loved worldwide, hundreds of thousands of copies sold of one book. And then the second, it was supposed to be a very big tome, but it was chopped into 3, a trilogy by the corporate publisher that did it, that originally published it. The first 2 segments were released, but the third segment was never released, and to this day has never been released. It's actually only been read by 2 people on the planet. There is literally not a week that goes by that someone doesn't track me down or track down my editor, your guys' editor, Brianne at Blue Forge Press, and say, when Where? Why? Please. Where is this third segment? Please release it. I would very much like it if that book that was published when I was 19, which I wrote when I was 16, over 100,000 words in 2 weeks as a welcome home gift to the person I was dating at the time, because they went away for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, Janice. I mean, very teen angst there. I have often wished that that particular story would disappear.
I had no idea this little sentence was going to elicit all of this. It's wonderful.
And what was interesting is when I shared that with your guys' son, at the very end of Fair Play, he said, you know, Jennifer, Whitman, and I don't know if he knows that I'm a huge Whitman fan, but he said, you know, Whitman, when he first wrote Leaves of Grass, it was this skinny little thing. And he kept rewriting it and reworking it until, you know, finally it is the Leaves of Grass that we know today. He said, you could rewrite it. And I burst into hysterical laughter. It was like something inside me broke. And I said, over my dead body, I have no interest. Because what a 16-year-old writes about, having had 16 years of life experience.
Which isn't very much.
Which is not very much. I mean, I'm not saying that there weren't exciting and traumatic and horrific and miraculous experiences in those 16 years, but because they were my 16 years, I can honestly say they did not compare to what came from 16 to 47.
We appreciate the angst, but there's a lot more angst to come.
So I would say I am actually, interestingly, not one of those writers who I'm like, oh, I'm constantly editing. But I think maybe that is because I have this 8-step process. So when I finally turn something in, I'm finished. I'm done. I'm ready to move on. And viewers may not know, but you guys know that when you turn a book in and then the editor looks at it and they either make additional changes or they request additional changes or not, but then the book is laid out and it comes back to the author as what's called a proof. And all we're supposed to do at that stage is go through to make sure during the conversion process no problems occurred, you know, like smart quotation marks didn't become dumb, as they call them, quotation marks, or there isn't a weird line break or something like that. Boy, I'm ready for that. I can do that. I don't have to change a thing, let me tell you. Because I'm like, no, this is exactly how I want it, or I never would have turned it in.
When the printer gets a hold of it and the technological word processing gets a hold of it, it makes changes that neither you or the editor or the producer wanted.
Yes.
So those changes can show up.
Yes, and so again, I think the proof stage is a very important stage, but definitely in terms of creative editing, I am definitely done at that point. I understand where writers are coming from when they say, oh, every time I pick up I just want to change more and change more, but I'm like, no, that story is that moment.
But part of it is the fact that when you create characters as real as we did for this series, they keep coming back. They keep coming back and saying, well, tell this part of my story. Tell this. You left this out. Come on. And those characters become very real people that still talk to some of us.
And that's why we may very well see a 4th installment in Dear Wear Codex.
May very well.
Even though, oh, is it a definite?
Well,
it wasn't until today.
Oh, it's definite now.
Looks that way.
All right. See, I like that. Well, does that answer your question, though, Jim?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
That question, when I thought of it, I viewed it as a single line you wrote somewhere, and when you see it again a day later, a week later, whatever, you think, oh God, I should have rephrased that. That way.
Yes,
I meant
because
it. But I also meant it like this. Is this full? Not this book.
Yeah,
this is perfect, but
I love that.
but when you look at your book, you think, oh God, did I really say all that stuff in there? I could have done it so much better.
Well, and we talked a little bit about this, about gender pronouns during our interview. You know, language is a moving target, I should really say. Yeah. Language evolves. And there was another episode of Speak where I talked about there was an award-winning collection. I mean, it won the Bumbershoot Poetry Award. It was a very big deal, a collection of poetry that I did that won all these awards. And the poems are about a dystopian, barren earth. So really, they're environmental poems. But the collection was called originally The Holocaust Poems Now. Mm-hmm. As a 13-year-old, okay, fine. And no one ever said anything to me. But now, as an adult, there has only one Holocaust. Yeah. Holocaust is not
it's a proper noun.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. And and people said, well, but to be authentic, if you ever reprint that, you need to call it that. I said, no, I don't. Who made that rule? Absolutely not. I can retitle it however I want, because language is a moving target. Yes. And what I was trying to say is a word that wasn't used then, and that is dystopia. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, how I'll move forward with that collection. But thank you, both of you, for coming out on this rainy day, taking time out of your weekend to talk with me, because I love it. And I am coming out of every single one of these interviews being so even more in love with all of the artisans, and just being so willing to fight hard so that your voices are heard, because I think all of us people have something. Can I read you some
more stuff out of here?
Very fascinating here. You know, Jim, you should have Janice point a camera at you, point a smartphone at you, and you should read little snippets and just put them up on the internet. Look at that there.
See, we haven't thought about that.
And I bet you wouldn't even hate that. That would be marketing that you wouldn't have to hate. And that is going to be it for us today for Fair Play. Find my full interview of Speak with Jim and Janice on our channel, and lots of other episodes of Speak and Fair Play. Thank you for joining us.